these words, we will not comply. So don't even think about it. We will not shut down our schools. We will not accept your lockdowns. We will not abide by your mask mandates. And we will not tolerate your vaccine mandates. We will not let it happen. When I'm back in the White House, I will use every available authority to cut federal funding to any school, college, airline, or public transportation system that imposes a mask mandate or a vaccine mandate. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I am having some technical issues this morning. I'm not really exactly sure what they are, but we'll see how things play out. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. I'm not really sure what's going on. I usually use T-Mobile to do the show because I have the best T-Mobile signal in the room that I'm in. But when it kept saying connecting, it wouldn't connect. And I thought I started the show, and then all of a sudden it stopped. So I'm not sure what's going on, but I ended up connecting to Starlink. I usually don't get Starlink as well in this room. So we'll see how Starlink does for us today. And Starlink is fantastic. I think it's just where I have my Starlink positioned, where it reaches the back of the house, but not the front of the house. So who knows? We'll see where we go. Allison, and I really hated it because I'm thinking, I've got some important things to talk about today. Some days, we're just talking about random news. Today we got something important to talk about. And so I'm like, man, I've got to get the show up and going. So hopefully things will continue. Sorry about the delay. And again, hope you guys are having a great morning. It is so cold outside. I don't even know I didn't check the temperature this morning. I know it was 5 degrees when I went to bed last night. I don't know if it's colder or warmer right now. I won't let the chickens out until after the show. Then I'll get a good dose of that crazy cold weather. Good morning, Karen. It's kind of a sad day, but we lost someone very significant yesterday. Jim Oates. I don't know how many of you know Jim from the St. Louis area here. Fantastic human being, amazing patriot, and I really hated to hear the news. So to Jim Oates, he listened to the show, didn't comment, but he was there in the background listening. So very, very sad news to wake up to this morning. Good morning, Dottie from North Carolina. Hope you're doing well. Hope all of you are doing well. We've got a lot to talk about today, and something that I want to talk about, I'm going to get into it a little bit later, just because I know a lot of people don't hop on till closer to 8 o'clock, and I think it's something everyone should hear. And that is a member of the Wagner Group caught crossing southern border illegally. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And Sherry, talk about a little bit about Donald Trump, the inauguration. There's a lot of warnings coming out about the inauguration, a lot of emergency services being convened. And it sounds to me like they expect something crazy to happen, but then you have to add planning something crazy to happen. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to catch up on the Los Angeles area fires. I want to show you guys this new Chinese supercar. This car jumps over puddles. It'll jump over potholes. It's pretty interesting. I've never seen a car that jumps over things before. Good morning, Brenda. And so we'll talk about that. NATO, stark warning from NATO, telling people, hey, you're going to be speaking Russian in 4 to 5 years. If you don't start listening, finally waking up maybe to the battle between NATO and BRICS that they've tried to deny for so long. Good morning, Kim. Hope you're doing well. So I got a lot of different things to talk about today. So not even sure where to start because there is so much. And yesterday, I really wanted to get around yesterday to talking about winter sowing in the garden. And, I never did get around to it, which I hate because, that's something I'm planning right now. I don't know where you guys are with your garden and how you garden, and I'm not somebody to take advice. Honestly, I'm the person who's learning and hoping to get advice for all of you. Jay says they expect record crowd size. I understand. I believe it because I know a couple of people going to the inauguration. And as I said yesterday, not me, not me. Who knows what's planned for the inauguration. And here at around 8 o'clock, when I start talking about this person from the Wagner Group coming across our southern border, that's a pretty scary situation. I wouldn't be surprised if that was related to the inauguration. So we'll definitely get into that. I think there's a lot of reason to be fearful about attending the inauguration. And we've got to go, we've got to support Donald Trump. But at the same time, do you really have to go? Is it really wise to go? Donald Trump, of course, having a rally the day before on the 19th in Washington, D.C. You wouldn't catch me there. I don't trust our government well enough to catch me there. But anyway, I want to talk again about a little bit about winter sowing, with your garden, because it's coming around the corner so fast. I've already got my Baker Creek seed catalog out. I order from a lot of different places. I try to use only heirloom seeds. Baker Creek is one of the places I probably purchased the most from. St. Clair Seed, which is St. Clair, Clare. Patriot Group, those people are absolutely fantastic. When you purchase seeds from St. Clair Seeds, what they do, a portion of your proceeds goes towards pro-life groups. So I think that's a really an added benefit to purchasing your seeds from St. Clair. I do purchase a lot of seeds from there also. And trying to think who else. There was a lot of different Native American seeds I purchased. I think that's the name of the company. There's a lot of different places I purchased seeds from last year. But, it doesn't matter how many seeds I purchase, and I purchased a lot. I have a lot left. If you cannot effectively garden, what really does any of it matter? And I've been reading a lot about winter sowing, and I don't know if any of you have tried this. Good morning, Elizabeth. And Dottie says she loves Sow True Seed out of Asheville, North Carolina. I think I've heard about that. I'm going to have to look into that. And, they say if you winter sow, meaning that right now in January, despite whatever your weather looks like outside, most people use, I think, old milk jugs. You can use plastic bags. I'll probably end up using baggies, the plastic 1 gallon baggies, most likely. And what you do is you take your potting mix. It has to be potting mix, not seed starter mix. You take your potting mix and you put it in your bag. It has to be moist, but not overly wet. And then you put a couple of seeds in there, make sure you pat them down, sprinkle a little layer of potting soil over them. And then you make sure that they're outside. If you use bags like I'm probably going to do, that you want to zip it, but you want to leave a little bit open and make sure it stays open because you need that moisture to come in. And what I am told is that if you winter sow your seeds, or at least the majority of seeds, you don't want to do that with tomatoes. There's a couple things you can't do that with, but they say the majority you can, not just necessarily cold crops. And you can do flowers, all sorts of things. Well, they say that it builds a hardier stem, that when your plant starts growing, it more easily transplants plants, it's more easily survives, and you receive a better crop. So that's something that I'm going to try out. I'll probably do a little bit of both, but in my case, you put your baggies outside. They say it's better to kind of string something through them, a rope or a stick or a pole to hang them so that they stay the same all the time. They're not squashed on the ground or moving around. And they say when they sprout when they're ready, when nature intends them to start sprouting, they'll start sprouting. So that's something I'm going to give a try. I don't know if any of you guys have done that before. My garden last year, as I've said before, wasn't that great. And it wasn't because it didn't do good. It was, I got powdery mildew, which really destroyed a good part of my garden. And B, I planted late. And that was because everybody says, wait till Mother's Day, wait till Mother's Day. Well, Mother's Day came around and my garden was underwater. I had no choice. We had so much rain in the springtime right around Mother's Day that I had to wait until almost 4 weeks after Mother's Day before I could actually plant anything. So I got a really, really late start. And man, I really hated that. I think it really set me off in a bad way, getting that late start. So this year I may not listen to the Mother's Day rule. We'll see. But if I'm winter sowing, it won't matter because my plants will be growing naturally. I have a little greenhouse too. I might put some things out there and see how that goes. But it's time to start thinking about it, now more than ever, because I'm telling you, you want to grow your own food as much as you possibly can. You want to grow your own food. And if you cannot grow your own food, please start looking now for a farmer. Look for a farmer, buy directly, look for farmers markets in your area, because I really think they're poisoning us. I don't think Donald Trump coming into office is going to change that immediately. It's going to take some time to back out of that. And can we? Because GMO is here. And when Donald Trump was in office before, they didn't do anything about GMO. Now, will they this time? I don't know. We'll certainly find out. Allison says, test your soil. You know what your pH is. And, Allison, last year I bought a soil testing kit, but I never got around to testing it. And somebody on my Facebook page warned me. They're like, you have no time. They don't even really know me that well. And they're like, you have no time for a garden. And they were correct. But I'm going to make time, and we all have to make time. Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Annette. Dottie says, I have better luck starting right from seed in the garden. I do start peppers and tomatoes inside. Last year I started a lot of things inside. If you would have seen my sunroom, I had hundreds of plants that I started inside. In the end, it was probably over 1,000 plants I started inside. And some of them did really well. And the ones that didn't do well were my own fault. One, not sure when to plant. I didn't plant them when I should have because of the rain. B, I just ran out of time and didn't have time to really effectively go out into the garden and make sure I took care of things properly. I'm going to do things better this year. And good morning, Rob. Jay says, blueberries need acidic soil. They do. And Jay, I have a lot of blueberries, and I am going to make sure that I do test the soil by the blueberries. I did buy a lot of berry type fertilizers to make the soil more acidic. So we'll see. I've got a lot of fruit trees to buy this year. There's a lot going on in my garden. So we'll see how all of that goes. But I wanted to make sure yesterday I want to talk about winter sowing. And, I do think it's a good option, and it's something I'm going to try just because I do think it's interesting that you put your seeds into the potting soil, in baggies or in these milk jugs, whichever you want. And they've done a lot of testing on this. And they say, if you do that, your seeds, your plants will grow much, they'll be much more hardy. They'll transplant much easier. You won't have as much failure, and you'll have a better crop. So I'm going to try. Last year, I did a lot of experimenting, and most of my experiments were failures. So this year, well, we hope things go a little bit better than what they did last year. Something else, let's see here. Lori, have you started canning? I have not. And you said your grandma would be proud. You started a few years ago. I haven't started canning. I keep saying I'm going to. I buy canning stuff here and there. And I planned on starting to can last year because, my house, I go through a lot of, I love green beans, go through a lot of green beans, carrots, sweet potatoes, that type of thing. And I thought, I'm going to grow these things and can them. And then I left for Georgia, obviously trying to get out the vote for Donald Trump. And right when my green beans started to come to harvest. So I missed that entire opportunity. And my corn was a complete failure. I maybe had one good corn stalk out of the hundreds of corn that I planted. Some animal kept digging them up and biting them in half. I'm going to do better this year. I really am going to do better this year. And Allison says, we grow enough and preserve to get us through the winter. It is very time consuming, but rewarding. Allison, that is my goal. I might need some help from you, some advice, but that is my goal. Good morning, Karen. And Jay says, canning is a lot of work. I trade to get canned stuff. Jay, I don't blame you. And, and Lori says, if she can do it, anyone can do it. Lori, I might need some advice from you also. Allison canned 86 quarts of green beans. I'm very jealous. And Jay says, deer will destroy the corn. And, Jay, I'm going to do a better job this year putting cameras on the garden because I did have a camera on the garden last year, but whatever was attacking my corn and some of my other items, it was in the middle of the night and it just didn't see it that well. So it must have been something off in the corner by the woods. So I'm going to do a better job of that this year. I've got, berries to plant, blackberries, raspberries, lots of fruit trees. I had an Asian pear, that grew some fruit this past season, which was really nice. And there's a lot I need to do. Allison says, get a digital canner. I will take your advice for that, Allison. I don't have a canner yet. So that's something that I need to do. And I think we all need to do our best to learn how to grow crops and how to can. And even if you don't have a space, or even if you can't grow vegetables or fruits yourself, find a good farmer's market, learn how to can, because you can go to a farmer's market. You don't have to grow the produce. You can go to a farmer's market and buy the produce, good, healthy, non-GMO produce, and then bring it home and then can it. it's no different than if you grew it or if they grew it. I personally want to learn more about gardening, which is why I'm choosing to grow it myself. But trust me, going to a farmer's market or a community garden is just as good. So don't feel like you have to be out there sweating away in the garden. Certainly feel free to buy it. Jay says if you're rural, you may need to fence it. Don't tell me that, Jay. I don't have time or energy to put up a fence, and my garden is absolutely enormous. Absolutely enormous. And I was kind of worried that my soil wouldn't be very conducive to gardening because where I'm at, we have a water is about 4 feet below the ground here, and there's a lot of water, and there's natural springs all through this area. And there in my garden, there's actually whether you call them crawdad, crawfish, whatever. There are holes all over the garden because the water table is so close, to the ground surface. So I worried that was going to be a problem. I have a combination of clay, silt, loam type ground, and so the first maybe I would say 6 inches on the top of my garden is really soft soil. Like if it's muddy and you walk on it, your feet sink right into that area. But underneath that is a solid table of like clay, again, silt and loam. And, you can tell when you walk through the garden, your feet sink down to a certain degree, and then it's like concrete. And that's because it's so stiff. And I was really worried that things wouldn't grow through there. But what did grow, what the powdery mildew didn't get, grew really well. So, and everything else was just user error, operator error on my part. So my dirt, despite me not testing it first, did do well. But, I'm not going to make that mistake this year. So anyway, some of the things I want to get to, something very important that I believe has taken place, and I hope that you guys not only take this to heart, what I'm going to tell you, but I hope that you tell other people because I think what has taken place, and I don't know if Colonel Joe Adams with the Washington Guard is listening or not. I'm going to send him a message later. If he doesn't, he may already know about this situation. And to me, it's quite serious. We catch people coming across our southern border all of the time. We know, and think about this, the people that we catch, that our Border Patrol catches, that's only probably about 20% of the number of actual people that come across our southern border. We already know that terrorists cross our southern border undetected. If the news reports, hey, we caught, 20 terrorists crossing our southern border, people who had terrorism ties. Well, guess what? There's another, probably 80 that we didn't catch. So think about that. And this is a very serious situation, in my opinion. And some of you are familiar with the Wagner Group because there was a time when we talked about them when it came to Ukraine. The Wagner Group, they're paid mercenaries. And they were hired by Russia to fight against Ukraine. They are brutal, no question about it. They come in, they get the job done. Wagner Group is made up of a lot of different individuals, from United States military veterans to Russians to different members of actual terror organizations, from Chechens. They're made up of just a number of different people. Basically, any person who has probably served in the military of the United States or any other country, they sometimes become mercenaries after they retire from their service, and then they join these groups like Wagner Group. Now, Wagner Group can be good and it can be bad. It depends on if they're fighting for you or against you. And I think this is pretty alarming that on January 4th, I just heard about this early this morning. On January 4th, a member of the Wagner Group, a Russian member of the Wagner Group. Now, this person is a mercenary, part of the Wagner Group, was caught coming across our southern border. He had with him a backpack containing a drone. He had $4,000 and he had 2 passports. Now, did he have other things? We don't know, and they're certainly not going to tell us. Do they know why he's here? We don't know. And again, they're certainly not going to tell us. Now, what we have to ask is, if there's somebody here from the Wagner Group, it doesn't, the news is trying to portray it that, oh, Russia is trying to attack us. They sent a mercenary into our country to attack us. Well, that's not necessarily the case, because anyone can hire the Wagner Group. They are up for hire. They're for hire mercenaries. They can be hired by Russia or Ukraine or ISIS or our own government. Anyone can hire the Wagner Group. They will unilaterally work for anyone who wants to pay them. That's what they do. That we have members of the Wagner Group coming across our southern border right before our inauguration with a drone and 2 passports. Now, what was this? And of course, he refused to speak to authorities. They did detain him. He is still detained. And we don't know. We have no answers because obviously he's not speaking. He's not going to talk. And what they know, they're never going to tell us. So the question is, who hired a Wagner Group mercenary to come into the United States, and what was their purpose? Now, they had a drone. A lot of things can happen with the drone. They can release biological weapons. They can release chemical weapons. They can be armed with explosives. There's a lot of things that a person can do with a drone. Now, if we caught one person coming across our southern border with a drone in a backpack, how many more are there? I would have to guess probably quite a few. So then we have to ask ourselves, okay, there are probably more than one. This guy was detained. There's probably many more that weren't. We don't know who paid them. We don't know why they're here. Most likely it's probably not friendly. And I wouldn't put it past our own government to hire them, quite honestly. I still think it's too quiet for the deep state to say, oh, we're just going to easily transition power. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that Russia hired this mercenary. It's possible the guy was Russian, but I don't think that would be the case. I don't think that Putin is that stupid, quite honestly. If Putin wants to attack us, I don't think he's going to send a member of the Wagner Group across our southern border. And not only that, but I think Putin wants us on the side of Russia because Russia wants to keep part of Ukraine. They want to end the war. They want to peacefully keep the area that they have, and let's all go about our business. And they're very close to making that deal. So you're right, Colonel Joe Adams on the comment line, he did not cross the border solo. He didn't. So now we have to worry, okay, where are the people who crossed with him? Where are the other mercenaries? I would really like to know. And I'm going to guess, being that he's not an American, that it's very possible our own government hired him because, our own government, they're not going to hire American mercenaries. They're not going to do that. And the reason why they're not going to do that is because it would be extremely obvious. And what American service member is going to be a traitor to their own country? They're out there fighting for themselves. Basically, they're fighting for the money. Of course, they get paid very well if you become a member of the Wagner Group. But I'm very concerned about who hired a member of the Wagner Group to come over. And I'm going to read something to you here. Might take me a couple seconds to find it. And, some of the preparations going into the inauguration, I think are, in my opinion, a little alarming, a little more excessive than what I really expected. So this was leaked. This was an internal memo from the Veteran Affairs. And this is what they are requesting for the Donald Trump's inauguration. They're calling for paramedics, registered nurses with emergency and surgical expertise, licensed medical practitioners specializing in emergency medicine. And then in the memo, it alerted of a heightened medical readiness initiative that they said has never, ever been requested before for any inauguration. And I think that's really interesting. And then some people said that also within this memo, it talked about health insurance policies have been updated to include new exclusions, stating that coverage will not apply to treatment of injuries or illness resulting from war, declared or undeclared, riots, or insurrections. So we have to ask, are we preparing for a mass casualty event at the inauguration? This seems very excessive to me. Why are the insurance companies, and I'll have to look at my own insurance, and you should do the same for yours. Why are insurance companies excluding injuries related to war, riots, mass casualty events? Why is this happening? And I believe that our government and insurance companies work in a coordinated effort. And, I'm not going to get into all of that right now. I think you understand and would probably agree with that, especially when it, comes to the Biden administration. And I don't know if any of you feel as seriously as I do about the fact that we had a Wagner mercenary crossing our southern border, attempting to go undetected and was caught and had, again, a drone in his backpack, $4,000, and 2 passports. And we have to ask, okay, he wasn't here for friendly reasons. He was not here to help us Americans. I can tell you that right now. He was not here to help us. He was here to harm us. Now we have to figure, okay, again, who hired him? Why is he here? Where was he going? I don't think it's any coincidence that he was coming in just prior to the inauguration. I don't think that's any coincidence at all. And the inauguration is outdoors. And yes, there are different plans in place where you can potentially stop drones if they have drone detectors, I'm sure, that will be set up at the inauguration, at the rally the night before, and around Washington D.C. But just because you detect a drone doesn't mean you can stop it. If you watch any of the battle, in Ukraine, you can see they have drone detectors everywhere, and that just lets them know that drones are in the area. It doesn't allow them to stop the drones. So this guy had a drone, and again, there's a lot a person can do with a drone. And to me, I was trying to think, like, what would be a likely scenario that this person, what would they possibly have done with that drone? And it depends on how many people they wanted to affect. If they were just after Donald Trump himself, let's say if it was an assassination attempt, it's possible the drone could be armed with explosives or some other type of weapon. And if they wanted to create a mass casualty event, again, explosives could be an option, but more likely it would be chemical weapons or biological weapons. There's been a lot of biologic vials, different types of diseases that have disappeared from labs in recent times. There's a lot of different things that could happen. And we know that this year we're heading into is really a war on terror, and that is going to be terror against Americans. And whether it's perpetrated by an adversary or our own government, it doesn't really matter. The fact is we need to have a heads up, regardless of who it is that is perpetrating, these potential terror attacks on us. Robert says poisons. Robert, I think that would be, if I had to guess anything, that would be my best guess. That if somebody's coming into our country with a drone, and they were probably, what they do is they come across our southern border, they don't have one guy that carries everything, because they can't take a chance they all get caught, or one person gets caught and the entire mission is done. So, they probably have several mercenaries coming across our southern border with drones. And then they probably have several others coming across with biological weapons and explosives and other things. As a matter of fact, they might already be in the country. They might already be here. And then at some point they'll meet up, they'll coordinate their attack. And so don't think that they're not here, that something can't happen. And will it be at the inauguration? Maybe they might say, okay, well, the inauguration is going to be too heavily protected, so let's take our attack somewhere else. Maybe the same day, maybe in the surrounding days. But I think everybody really needs to have a heads up that we have mercenaries in our country who are planning an attack against us, and we'll probably never know who hired them. So we might as well not even think about it. I could go down a big rabbit hole as to why I think it would be our own government. But, it could be a situation where this particular person was Russian. It's possible, he was here as a retaliation against the war, with Ukraine. I don't expect that to be the case. Mercenaries aren't typically going to be affected emotionally. They're paid, they're paid mercenaries. They do the work of the highest bidder. So could it be ISIS that paid them? It could be. Could it be our own government? Yes. Could it be another adversary, Iran? Yes. It could be a lot of different people that paid mercenaries from Wagner Group to come into our country. It doesn't really matter, does it? The fact that, and the only thing that matters is that they are here. Trust me, if one was caught, the rest of them are here. And there's probably more coming across the border all the time. Not to mention the fact, I don't know if you guys remember, there was a video that surfaced a while back where there was a guy a Middle Eastern man who was at the border, and he had been stopped by border control. And he was released, by the way, also by border control. And he made a statement to them like, oh, you have no idea who I am. Dumb Americans, you really have no idea who I am, but you will know who I am. You will know. And then, of course, people, very astute folks who later went back and looked at that video said, oh, I know exactly who that is. He's a terrorist. He's a well-known terrorist that crossed our southern border. And that guy, he's here in our country. They let him go. So he is definitely here in our country. They didn't even check him out or find out what his name is or find out any information. They stopped him at the border. He was given entry into our country, and so he's here. And Allison says, could it be the deep state? Oh, absolutely, Allison. It absolutely could. Because we have to remember the deep state, they're not going to give up power so easily. They're not going to give up power so easily. They want it to look like on the surface that they're handing over power to Donald Trump and they're not going to fight it. They're just going to so easily transition. That's what they want it to look like on the surface. I'll tell you what, I would feel a lot better about things if they were trying to fight Donald Trump, if they were asking for recounts, if they were trying to get the different electors to not cast their electoral vote for Donald Trump. But they didn't do any of those things. None of those things. They very easily handed over power. And that means that, in my opinion, how I feel, and you don't have to feel the same way, I feel that means there's something going on below the surface. That means they know they're still going to gain power, but in a different way. And what will that way be? I don't know. It's left up to our imagination. I don't trust our government at all under the Biden administration or under Democrat control. Don't trust them at all. As a matter of fact, if somebody told me trust your government or take a chance drinking this coffee that may or may not have poison in it, I would drink the coffee. That's a may or may not. Government 100% can't trust. And so I don't know. All we can do, and it's unfortunate, we're just a bunch of sitting ducks. All we can do is prepare. And I know on this show, you guys are probably so tired of hearing me talk about preparing, but it is the only thing you can pray and you can prepare. That's it. Those are the only two things you can do. You can hide in your home, but that's not going to help you or anyone else. Hiding in your home, not going out, not going about your business is not helping you or anyone else. All you can do is pre-prepared, because when it happens, you need to be ready. And if something crazy happens at the inauguration, it's going to throw our country into absolute turmoil. And if it happens otherwise, again, what do we do? Something is happening. Something is going to happen. I just told you guys yesterday about, and it could be related. I don't think it's related, but we had that Tustin, is it Air Force? What was it? In Colonel Jones, if you remember, it was in Tustin, California. It was at some type of naval academy or something along those lines, where there were 3 Humvees that were stolen, one of them being armored, along with some machine gun mounts and some other things like that, and medical supplies. So someone is either planning something and took that equipment, or someone knows something is coming, took that equipment to prepare for whatever's coming. But that these things are happening at the same time. I don't think that it's unrelated. And Robert says, I believe selected, not elected, have for many decades now. So how can I not believe DJT isn't a part of it? What changed? Changed my mind. Well, Robert, in my opinion, that's an easy one. And people ask me that question often. To me, that's an easy one. Is that selected, not elected? Absolutely. For Democrats, that is absolutely the case. Yesterday, I compared it to the Ba'ath Party in Syria. Assad by the president. And yes, if you go back and look at the election looks fair. People claim they voted for him. Did they? I don't know. Our government, Obama, says they didn't, that it was all fake. But the Ba'ath Party has been, ruling in Syria for a very long time. And here in the United States, we don't call it a regime, because for whatever reason here in America, we term things much more nicely. But it is a regime. The people who have been controlling this country are the same party for a very long time. Now, the faces may change, but it's still the same party. Elections have been rigged for a very long time. Maybe longer than I've been alive, at least since JFK, I'm guessing. Some people say before that. And so one party has ruled one time. And I believe, to your question, Robert, that we staged a coup. We, the people, we staged a coup. We didn't even know we staged a coup, but we did. And what that coup was is we got fed up. In other countries, they would call it a coup. Here we call it, we came out in mass and voted. But we staged a coup against the Democrat regime. We all said we'd had enough. We're not taking it anymore. And we all got out and we did what we were supposed to do. And we voted in record numbers. And because we voted in record numbers, even though they cheated, we still won. And then they said, well, they're never going to let that happen again. They will never allow that to happen again. And so therefore, they underestimated us is what happened in 2016. And then in 2020, they had 4 years to prepare. And that's why you see in 2020 that Biden, there was around 18 million votes, 20 million votes that wouldn't have even existed. They were a complete anomaly. Those extra votes were a complete anomaly. They were completely out of line with any prior election. And why did they do that? Because they knew that no matter how many of us came out and voted, they had to beat us. Now, what happened in 2024 is Elon Musk. Elon Musk and America PAC came into the picture, and we won in the early vote. And I know this because I'm one of the people who worked for America PAC that was out, getting the vote for Donald Trump, the early vote in battleground states. We won because Elon Musk put these programs in place. He made sure we got the early vote out. And since so many people voted early and Donald Trump had the vote, he had the win in the early vote, that didn't allow Democrats to cheat. They didn't get to turn the power off, on election night and add some more votes in. It was too late. And thank you, Robert. I'm trying to explain as well as I can because that's how it is and how I think of it in my head. And it's okay for you to still be skeptical, but Donald Trump is the real deal. He is not part of the Democrat regime. He's the real deal. And he is one of us. Joe, good morning, Joe, says if the Dems were planning a peaceful transfer of power, that wouldn't have felt necessary to release the Jack Smith report. Also true. And, and of course, Joe Biden, throwing a lot of things out there at the last minute, making a lot of laws that were going to be difficult for Trump to undo, so that when Trump, takes office, it's going to seem really bad. And Robert says, Elon seems off to me. He's a quirky person, I think. I think he's an eccentric, quirky person. I don't think there's anything wrong with Elon Musk. And you know what? We're people who pay attention. If somewhere down the line, Elon Musk starts to do things that are out of line with what we think we want in our country, guess what? He will cease to exist as part of our government because Donald Trump is going to do what the people want. And right now, I think that Donald Trump would not have won if it weren't for Elon Musk, because Elon Musk put hundreds of millions of dollars into the Trump campaign. And well, not into the Trump campaign, but into America PAC, which got the vote out for Donald Trump. And trust me, he paid well. And there was thousands of people out in all of these battleground states. I was one of them. And not only that, but he was, giving people $1 million just as, a chance at winning $1 million just to sign a petition to protect our First and Second Amendment rights. I think he's also the real deal. I think we can trust Donald Trump. We can trust Elon Musk at this point in time. If something happens, trust me, we'll be right on top of it. But don't think for a minute that it is truly a peaceful transfer of power. I don't believe it. I'm not falling for it. And a lot of people I know just joined us in the past couple of minutes. But, if you did just join us, go back and listen to the show, because what we were talking about is a Wagner Group mercenary crossing our southern border, carrying a backpack full with a drone with 2 passports and $4,000. And I will bet you anything. That if there's one, there's many more. I would literally bet my life on it. And they are here. And why are they here? Who paid them? We may or may not ever know. But be on guard, because something is going to happen. I don't know when. I don't know where, but I don't think it's any coincidence that we have Wagner Group mercenaries coming across our southern border ahead of this inauguration and ahead of course, the big rally that's going to take place in Washington, D.C. the night before the inauguration. And I read to you guys the unprecedented emergency responders that are supposed to be at the inauguration. They are clearly expecting and preparing for a mass casualty event. That doesn't mean it'll happen, but they are certainly preparing for it. They must have reason to think that it could happen. And so that we've got to give that a little bit of credit to that it's not anything we wouldn't expect, right? I don't know what's going to happen, but it will soon. It will play out. And like I said the other day, you wouldn't catch me in Washington D.C. Nope, not at the rally, not at the inauguration, none of those places. Definitely a hot spot. And so we'll just have to wait and see what happens, But please listen when they start talking about it on the news. They're trying to blame it on Russia. They're claiming, oh well, Russia hired this mercenary. The mercenaries for Wagner Group are fighting against Ukraine right now. Russia's paying them. But I want to reiterate once again, don't fall for the propaganda, because most likely it is not Russia that paid this Wagner Group mercenary to come into our country, because they work for whoever is the highest bidder, whether again that's our government or an adversary. It could be anyone. That doesn't mean it's Russia. Russia has the least to gain from sending mercenaries across our southern border to attack us or to attack Donald Trump. But our government has the most to gain from us thinking that Russia did it. So think about that a little bit. Never trust what you hear, the narrative that comes from the mainstream news. Always remember that. And Jay says it would be irresponsible not to plan for the possibility. I agree completely. It doesn't mean you need to go out and rush the grocery stores and barricade yourselves at your home, but it means that you need to put your head on a swivel, as we all should at this point. Tom Homan, of course, our incoming border czar, he's even creating a hotline, and the hotline is going to be for Americans to use if you see someone who either is known to be illegal or who you suspect to be illegal that commits a crime. Now, it's not for, oh, I saw somebody that looks like they're Middle Eastern in a truck and they're just hanging out doing nothing. It's not for that. It is for, hey, this person started a fire. Look what happened in California. They arrested, remember, citizens arrest kind of this guy in California. I think that was the Palisades fire. I can't remember which fire exactly that was in California, but he had a yellow propane blowtorch. Remember that? Citizens held him. They zip tied him. Police arrived. They arrested him. They let him go. Well, now we know he's an illegal. The guy's not even, and tell me he didn't start that fire and he didn't do it on purpose. So never will I believe that. We're going to talk about those fires here in just a couple minutes, by the way. But if you see something, say something. That's the best way to put it. If you see something, say something, especially right now when we are and should be at this alert stage of potential terror attacks in our country. Be on the lookout. If you see something suspicious, report it. It never hurts to report it, whether you report it to Tom Homan's upcoming, crisis line for illegals committing crime, or whether you call 911 or whatever you called your if you're in Missouri, call Colonel Joe Adams. He'll take care of it. But I'll tell you what, if you see something, say something, because you really just don't know. You really just don't know. And there's so many different incidents that could have been stopped had someone thought, oh, gee, this guy is awfully suspicious. Look at the Jabbar, the bomber in New Orleans. He had a bomb inside of a cooler, which he took out of his truck and left it on the street in some undisclosed location in the French Quarter. Nobody noticed it. Nobody paid attention. No one called and reported it. Allegedly, there are more than one. It's kind of interesting where everyone just shut up. Did you notice about that? Originally, he had accomplices. Remember? 3 men and 1 woman who were seen placing explosives all along the area of the French Quarter. Then all of a sudden, nope, that's not true. They were mistaken. He acted alone. He was a lone wolf. I don't believe for 1 minute that guy was a lone wolf. I don't believe it for 1 minute. And let's see, Robert, it's about a price. Everything will be made outside of the U.S. And Joe says, how do I identify them with no ID? We need to be made marshals of the state. Well, that's happening in Florida. In Texas. People are being made deputies of the state. And let's see, Robert, for you tariff haters, FYI, most of our trading partners have VAT taxes of 18%, then currency differentials, and lastly, on average, a 5% healthcare advantage. So 30% tariff puts us almost equal, excepting the low wages. Tooling and non-production type manufacturing companies are getting decimated. I think everybody's getting decimated these days. Good morning. I believe it's Wahid, if I'm saying that correctly. Joe, hit the like button, Patriots. And good to see you this morning, Joe. So much going on today. Again, I wanted to talk about the Wagner Group. That was extremely important. Don't put anything past Ukraine. Don't put anything past Ukraine. Ukraine allegedly, according to Russia, was planning a terror attack against them. And they found someone, it was actually a Russian, who was hired by Ukraine. Was it a member of the Wagner Group? I don't know. But of course, Russia claims that this person was caught, they were apprehended, and they had chemical weapons. And guess what? They had a drone. And Russia claims they were planning on using this drone against Russians, releasing chemical weapons. So don't put anything past anyone right now. Can we put it past Zelensky to hire mercenaries to harm U.S. citizens? No. I don't put anything past anyone, and you shouldn't either. And also when it comes to Russia, BRICS is a powerful force. It really is. BRICS is a powerful force, and I've said for a long time, and I'll continue to talk about it, that going forward, it is going to be NATO versus BRICS. We might have this war on terror against the United States coming up in 2025, but I'll tell you what, there's uprisings, there's instability taking place across the world, but the only group that is growing would be BRICS. They control more of the GDP than the West, than Europe, than NATO. They control more of the population than NATO. And NATO's getting a little bit worried. Donald Trump just told Europe the other day that, hey, you need to step up your payments into NATO. You need to pay at least 5% of your GDP. And of course, they're all like, oh, no, we can't do that. Too much money. Half of them don't pay in anything anyway. We pay their share, and which is, of course, part of the reason why I think we need to withdraw from NATO, is because we're paying the fair share for everyone else. And of course, we don't have the money as a country to spend. We don't, and I could care less about Europe, quite honestly. Anyway, I wouldn't be opposed to joining BRICS. I know that sounds crazy, but I wouldn't be. I think we'd have a better chance of keeping power and becoming a better country, quite honestly, or sovereign. Withdraw from NATO, don't join BRICS, just be a sovereign country. But we got to withdraw from NATO. But anyway, so Mark Rutte, he is the NATO secretary. So he is warning NATO members right now, if you don't increase your payments to NATO, if you continue to only pay 2%, again, a lot of Western European countries not even paying their 2%. He said, if you don't bolster money coming into NATO, guess what? Within 5 years, we're all going to be speaking Russian. You're going to have to enroll in Russian-speaking classes, because guess what? BRICS has the advantage, and NATO can no longer compete against BRICS. And at some point, as BRICS becomes more powerful, they will eventually overpower NATO. And you Americans, you Europeans, if you don't want to be speaking Russian within 4 to 5 years, you're going to have two choices. You're going to have to emigrate to, these are his words, not mine. He said, you're going to have to emigrate to New Zealand, or you're going to have to, again, learn how to speak Russian. And I think he's right. I think he's absolutely right. I've been saying it for a very, very long time, for 3 or 4 years now. I've been saying the same thing. If we don't get ourselves lined out and become a more self-sufficient country and get rid of NATO, distance ourselves from NATO, because all Europe is doing is sucking us dry. They're just taking advantage of us. We've got to withdraw. And Elizabeth, BRICS is like NATO, but it is made up now. It started out being, Russia, Brazil, South America, Africa, South Africa, and now in China. Now, of course, there are, I don't even remember how many countries. I believe there are over 100 countries now that are part of BRICS. And it's a very powerful force. And, as a matter of fact, speaking of BRICS, Venezuela has made a threat to Puerto Rico, and or I should say to the United States over Puerto Rico. And they said that we will have Nicolas Maduro, who is the president of Venezuela, he just stated that he will have Brazilian troops in Puerto Rico, liberating Puerto Rico from the United States. And that's a very serious threat. It's a very serious threat. And I think it's something we should take seriously. I don't trust Nicolas Maduro. You guys probably don't trust Nicolas Maduro. And it's a big problem. And Elizabeth says, under who? I'm not sure what you mean by under who. And thank you, Robert. And yeah, India being one of the bigger partners. There are so many of them, countries who have joined BRICS. Such a large list anymore. And you know what? 60 something countries applied to join BRICS this year. And Russia said, okay, well, we can't accept all of these countries. Cuba recently became a member of BRICS. So, it's happening very quickly. There's a lot of talk that Mexico will become a member of BRICS. And pretty soon we're going to be surrounded, and there's really nothing we're going to do about it. And, every great nation has fallen, right? Look at the Ottoman Empire. Look at all of the different empires that have been at the top of their game historically, and all of them have fallen. And we, the United States, we're no different. We can fall. I believe we have fallen. Quite honestly, I think that Russia and China have advanced military far above the capabilities that we have. And it's not because we don't have a good military or because our men and women aren't good at what they do, but it's simply because Democrats have taken money away from our military. They have defunded the military, and they have given everything we have to Ukraine. And so we are weak militarily, and we're not ready for war. If somebody declared war on us today, we're not ready for war. And we would be in a very serious situation if that were to occur. There's a lot of things that have to be planned out and stockpiled by our military, particularly fuel, to fuel jets and so on. And we don't have those stockpiles. That's pretty obvious. We've given every penny we have, every extra surplus, from our military. We don't have the rare earth minerals right now to create a lot of the weapons that we need, a lot of the military machinery that we need. And that's because we've given it all up. Russia and China, BRICS, are far more powerful. I agree with Mark Rutte of NATO. If we're going to continue to be a member of NATO, and we don't start bolstering the money going into NATO, which I'm not in favor of, by the way, but I do agree that European countries particularly will start speaking Russia within 4 to 5 years, because they will be owned by BRICS. As BRICS becomes more powerful, they will start invading these other countries. Don't think that they won't. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time before that happens. Jay says NATO has outlived its purpose and evolved into something it was never intended to be. I agree. NATO back in the day, was meant to stop Russian aggression during the Cold War. We don't need NATO anymore. We don't need to be a part of NATO. We have to stop being the police of the world. We have to stop funding all of these wars that NATO wants to be involved in. And I feel that if you're listening to this show, you probably feel like I do. Everything that we fight for is the exact opposite of what Europe and NATO want. Their goals do not align with us. I don't want to see any of this going on. I want peace. I don't want to fight with anyone. I don't want to fight with anyone. I don't think we should be fighting. We shouldn't even be in Syria. We should have never been in Syria to begin with. We should have never been Iraq. We really messed ourselves up going to Iraq. That should have never happened. And because of what we did in Libya and what we did in Iraq, what we've done in Iran, what we've done in Syria, we've created the terrorism and the terrorists who now want to cause us harm. And if you ask people in other countries, we are the terrorists. So think about that. Who the terrorism is subjective, isn't it? And Jay says Russia is nowhere near the threat that the Soviet Union was. Well, Russia is, when you consider Russia is partners with China and Iran. And now Turkey's kind of back and forth. Turkey, I think these days is more aligning with Russia and China than they are with NATO. They're still a member of NATO, but I don't think they will be for long. I think Turkey is going to end their relationship with NATO and move over to the BRIC side. And then we, United States, we have to decide, what are we going to do? Are we going to continue to be part of NATO, which does not align with our conservative beliefs? It does not. Europe, I feel like Europe needs to be on their own. They have made their choices. They've made their choices. And it's unfortunate for the people in Europe, but they have decided that wokeism and liberalism, was more important than the safety of their citizens. And I feel like they've made their choices. And now we need to make our choice. And that is to separate from the UN, to separate from NATO, and be a sovereign country. We don't have to be a member of BRICS or a member of NATO, but we have to become more self-sustaining, which I think we are certainly going to work towards doing under Donald Trump. And Robert says, one's freedom fighters is another's terrorists. You got that right, Robert. I think about that all the time when it comes to different groups, particularly the Houthis over in Yemen. Every time I hear a report, well, the Houthis have attacked U.S. ships, and I don't want to see any of our service people die. But I'll tell you what, between the United States and Saudi Arabia, we created the Houthis in the what their actions by what we've done to Yemen. What is there? Yemenis have 250, 300,000, probably more than that right now, have died between war and famine. I mean, we did that to those people. We did, the United States. We did that to the Yemenis. They certainly didn't deserve it. And that would be the Democrat regime controlling party that took place in that. We're still bombing Yemen. We continued to bomb Yemen even under Trump during his last term. So that's something to think about. Definitely something to think about. And Joe says Republicans and Democrats are the terrorists. Well, in Congress, yes, we the people know, but certainly in Congress. And let's see, I gave Ukraine pension fund, $3.5 billion, 152 LA victims. I'm glad you just went on with these fires in the Los Angeles area. They continue to burn. Oh, let me throw something in here. Discuss and plan for future terrorist attacks. We need a plan. We need a plan of action because it's coming. And again, I want to reiterate for people who weren't listening to us earlier, when I was talking about Wagner Group mercenary being caught on our border, very likely planning some type of attack against Americans. When we say terror attacks against the United States, that doesn't necessarily mean people who hate us. It very well could be our own government planning terror attacks because they do hire mercenaries. They do hire people we call terrorists to harm us in our own country. So when we think about terror attacks, it could very well be our own government attacking us. So never forget that. And Joe Fry says, people in the Middle East see American soldiers, they call them the terrorists. Yeah, it's very subjective to who and who is not a terrorist. And Colonel Joe Adams, by the way, for anyone listening, I will not have a show tomorrow morning. I have duty calls, work, and I hate it. I wish that I had somebody to replace me, but on Wednesdays I don't. On some days I do, but Wednesdays I don't. And so we're going to work out a time with Colonel Joe Adams when he can join us. And when he does, we'll talk again about this mercenary situation, Wagner Group mercenary coming through our southern border with what appears to be all intent to harm us Americans. And we'll also talk about, of course, his Saturday meeting because we need to talk about it. And Joe wants Colonel Joe Adams to comment on the movie Homestead. I've got free tickets to Homestead and I still haven't seen it, but I do plan to. And Joe says Antifa or BLM are terrorists. They are. There's a lot of different groups that you can consider terrorists. That's for sure. I can only safely say that we conservatives of all people are the opposite of terrorists, right? Crazy enough to think. But yeah, these fires in Los Angeles still going strong. As a matter of fact, the Palisades fire has moved into Brentwood. I believe it was the Palisades fire that went into Brentwood. More homes, more businesses in the line of fire, literally. And then we have to ask ourselves, speaking of not trusting the government, I thought this was interesting. I'm going to play a little video clip for you because to me, it sounds like this guy is saying that they started the fire on purpose. So I'm really confused by this. And now I blame the fire on arsonists. Some people blame it on DEW weapons, direct energy weapons. I don't know what to think, but listen to this really quickly. And was this just a slip of the tongue? Or was this something that is real? Because I'm telling you, I really don't know. This is the LA County Director, Mark Pestrella, talking about the Los Angeles fires.
First,
Listen very
before we
closely.
embark upon what is going to be a journey to rebuild these communities back and rebuild them better than they were when we started this
All
fire.
right, eventually.
So,
All right, well, sooner or later that's going to play. I'm having some, as you guys know, I started the show late today because I'm having some technical issues. I usually stream the show on T-Mobile, and T-Mobile, for whatever reason, wouldn't stream today, so I had to use my Starlink. Usually Starlink doesn't reach this side of the house, so we'll see. Anyway, well, I'm trying to play the video. Let's see if it plays.
First, before we embark upon what is before we embark upon what is going
It's
to be a
here.
journey
I see
to
it. I
rebuild.
don't know if you guys see it. Is it going to
First,
play or is it
before
not
we
going to play?
embark upon what is going to be a journey to rebuild
Oh, it did play?
these communities back and
Laura, you
rebuild them
heard it?
better
You
than they
seen
were
it? I didn't.
when we started
So
this
I guess I
fire.
won't play it again. I don't know what's going on with my...
So,
Well, I apologize. I'm not really sure what happened, but I'm glad you guys saw it and you heard it because I didn't on my end. But you clearly, I have listened to it. If you heard it, then you heard him say, we started these fires. Now, why would he say when we started these fires? Kind of reminded me of some of the initial reports. And that was, there were on day one, the morning that I woke up, I think it was Tuesday last week, I woke up and I thought, oh my God, the Palisades are on fire, Pacific Palisade. I've spent a lot of time in Malibu and in that area and very near and dear to my heart. I have friends that live there. And I thought, oh my gosh. And, and of course, not unusual to have fires in California, but, in the LA area, but unusual this time of year. And so I remember looking at reports, and the first report I saw was some people saying, because I was looking at reports from people who live in that area, and they said, oh, yeah, we saw arsonists starting these fires. And when we confronted them, they said, oh, no, we're doing this. It's for the better good of the area. Those were the words they used. It's better for it's for good. Don't worry about it. Just let us do what we're doing. And it kind of, when I saw this clip, I thought, gosh, that's awfully strange that this guy is saying the same thing the arsonist said. The fires we started. And trust me, Gavin Newsom gave an interview yesterday. And it's long, so I'm not going to play it right now. They already have a plan in. They already have a plan in place. They already have people working on a plan for the areas that were burned. I mean, how can you look at that and gosh, isn't it a little soon? The fire is still going. People are out of a home, thousands of people at this point no longer have homes to go back to. And Gavin Newsom already has a plan in place. He's already has engineers getting things together for the next plan for this land. It is absolutely insane. And Jay says California is full of environmental wackos. I would agree. And I think there's probably people who do think the fires were a good idea, as crazy as it sounds. Linda says, I heard it. I thought I heard that we started these fires. Yeah, that's exactly what he said. Now, was it a slip of the tongue? Maybe I've said things before that just popped out of my mouth that I didn't mean to say. But I really am wondering what's going on there. And Robert says, LA 2028, 15-minute city. We talked about the LA area fires yesterday. These fires are nowhere near contained. And now there's a new fire. I don't know if you saw that. I think they're calling it the auto fire. I'm not sure why they're calling it auto fire, but it's in Ventura. And last night, the last report I saw that it had about 5 acres burned. They were calling in helicopters, other emergency personnel. Today, there's a critical fire warning for many other areas, throughout the LA area into Orange County. And there probably will be more fires. They are, facing unprecedented winds and, unusual unprecedented winds. Or the Santa Ana winds can be very strong, but I don't think anything like what we're seeing right now. And that can be for a lot of different reasons. It could potentially be because of planetary alignment. We have the planetary, what do they call that? The Parade of Planets 2025. And I think I have a photo of it here. I don't trust my system today. So I don't know. I probably won't be able to, I probably won't even try because it probably will not. So I'm not going to even look at it, but they call it the Parade of Planets. And you can all up into the night sky on a clear night and see the planets lining up. All of the planets are going to be lined up, all of them, by January 25th. And then that's going to last for, they say, up to a month, that the planets are going to carry that alignment. And, if you know anything about planets aligning, that can cause a lot of problems. It could potentially cause these winds because it changes the tides. The tides bring in the winds. It does and will cause potentially earthquakes. A lot of talk I've been seeing the past couple days about New Madrid and the New Madrid fault line, of course, that goes through Missouri and into Illinois and Tennessee. So those are some, in Arkansas, those are some things to think about. Jay says the winds have been this strong before, just not often. Yeah, I'm not saying they've never been this strong, but these winds have been going full blown for days now, and they're even going to pick up more today. And I don't think that's normal, and I'm not saying that it can be normal. I just feel like there's a lot more going on into this situation. Maybe that's the conspiracy person in me, to not trust our government, not trust what I'm seeing. But it also could, again, be explained by, there's a lot of weirdness going on in our planet right now, between the instability in our magnetosphere, between the planets lining up, which is, also unusual for the planets to line up this way. And, a lot of Asian, I don't see that in American news, but I've seen it a lot in Asian news, where they're talking about all of the heightened risks that are taking place because of the planetary alignment. It's interesting to me that here in America, we don't really talk about these things, but in other countries they do. And, they're preparing for earthquakes. The Philippines preparing for an earthquake. They've already, sent out an alert a little while ago to all their citizens of the Philippines along the coast to say, hey, we could potentially experience a very strong earthquake, and certainly can happen. Robert says, LA fires, with all the environmental and building codes now in place, lack of construction companies and workers to do the work, how can everyone rebuild? Robert, that's a very good question. I don't expect them to allow all people to rebuild. I really don't. I don't expect that to happen. I think we're going to see a lot of this land that's bought by the government, and it's going to become parks or wilderness. And I think a lot of the beach area will be left as a free beach, maybe, for tourism, something along those lines. I think that they would rather not. Some of these people have been living in these beach houses. Some of these houses were built, in the 1900s, and they've just continued to pass down hands. And the government would love to have that property. They would love to have that property. And how, of course, global warming folks think is that the less people, the better. And so California would love to have some of those folks, move away or move out of California, because they're overpopulated as it is. So we'll see how that all works out. Lori said she saw Mars right next to the moon last night. Yes, I saw tons of photos of some of the planetary alignment. A lot of people were saying, what is going on? What's up in the sky? Is it drones? Is it orbs? Nope, it's the planets. Planetary alignment already taking place. And I work tonight. I work tonight. I was trying to think, do I work tonight? I work tonight, but on my very long drive home from work in the middle of the night tonight, I'm going to try to get a good look at the planetary alignment. Something to think about. Let me think. One of the other things I wanted to throw in, and again, if you are just chiming into the show now, please go back and listen from the beginning. We talked about gardening in the beginning. You don't have to listen to that, but right around 8 a.m., we started talking about the Wagner Group mercenary that came across our southern border. And I think it's such an important story that if you didn't hear all of that, please go back and listen. And not only listen, but tell people because there is an attack planned on this country. And if you go back and you listen to what we were talking about, it'll give you a better idea of what that plan may be. And trust me, it's coming. Robert says, LA fires, mudslides on the way. You got that right. Every time there's a big fire, anywhere, and it clears the land, the next thing that happens, we have a lot of rain that comes through, and then you end up with mudslides. So that is next to follow. California, of course, expecting earthquakes too. That's the other thing. They were under some kind of a 60-hour, was it a 60-hour warning the other day? Nothing so far has happened. We had that big earthquake in Japan yesterday, but nothing so far, too major in California. But it can happen. It can certainly happen. Before we head out, a couple different things I wanted to talk about. I'm trying to look and see. Oh, something I wanted to throw in while we're still talking about the LA fires, because I thought this was kind of funny. I don't know if you guys have seen this, and I don't recall who released the report. If it was the fire chief maybe in LA, but apparently on New Year's Eve, fireworks set off a fire in one of these same areas. I think the Palisades fire. And now 6 days later, Palisades fire began. But they're trying to go back and say, oh, well, we put a fire out on New Year's Eve that was started because of fireworks. And 6 days later, that fire, it reignited. Now, that's not even possible. I'm not even a firefighter. I know nothing about fires. So they're going to tell us that, what was it, just smoldering for 6 days and then reignited all of a sudden? I'm not saying that's not possible, but I have a hard time, certainly have a hard time believing it. Jay says, second issue is building materials are far more expensive and will exceed the value of the home. Most likely their land is going to be bought and they will not be able to rebuild. A lot of these people didn't even have insurance, or insurance companies had canceled them. So the best they can hope for is that their land will be bought. I don't expect a lot of these people to rebuild or have the ability to rebuild. So we'll see what happens to land. But gosh knows, as I said, Governor Gavin Newsom already has a plan in place. He's already got engineers working on it. He already knows exactly what's going to happen to this land and who will and who will not rebuild. So it's awfully strange that the fire's not even out. A lot of these people don't, still sleeping in their car. They don't even have anywhere to go. And he's already planning what's going to happen to the land their home stood on. And, the death count continues to climb. And there are still a lot of people missing in the Los Angeles fires, and North Carolina too. There's still a lot of people missing in North Carolina after Helene. So we can't forget about those folks either. And so I'm going to show you guys something before I go. I know I'm about to run out of everything that I wanted to talk about. And lastly, this is kind of crazy, but I think we need to talk about it, it's just because it's interesting. Just going to show where China is. I want to show you, oh, by the way, the border wall is being rebuilt. I'm not going to show that video clip because I don't trust my video clips right now. I'm going to do my best to show you this vehicle. China that can jump over, it can jump over potholes. And I would really like one of these. If somebody wants to let me know how I can get it. I can't see the video. I think I'll kind of frustrated. So I'm just going to let it play and hope that you guys are watching it even though I can't see it. All right. Were you guys able to see the video of the car? I promise to do better tomorrow. I don't know what's happening today to my internet. As you guys know, I started a little bit late because my internet just would not play the show. And I use T-Mobile in this room. It's reliable in the part of the house that I'm in. And I have Starlink on the other side of the house. So I connected to Starlink today because the show wouldn't go. And Starlink, I think because it's too far away from where I'm at, it doesn't play very good in this area. So I don't know if you guys got to see the supercar or not. I'll share it on Facebook later just in case. And I'm going to talk on Facebook a little bit later also. Elizabeth says, wow, so you must have seen it. I wish I could have. But it is pretty neat that they came up with this technology where they have a car that jumps over potholes. Why don't we have a car that jumps over potholes here in the United States? Now, I would never buy a Chinese car, by the way. I drive a Jeep. I've driven a Jeep for many years. Jeep Wrangler, by the way, is American-made. Cherokees are not. But a Jeep Wrangler is made in Ohio. And so buy American, always buy American. But I do think that we need some technology where we can also jump over potholes. Because if you live in the St. Louis area, you need it. You definitely do need it. We have a lot of potholes going on. Well, I think that's about it. I don't really think I have anything else to talk about. Again, if you join the show a little bit later, be sure to go back and take a look at some of the things we were talking about. And that, of course, would be the Wagner mercenary that was caught coming across our southern border illegally with a backpack of a drone, $4,000, 2 passports. Mercenaries, of course, are hired by the highest bidder, not necessarily Russia, as, of course, our government is going to want to tell us us. We talked a little bit about NATO, warning people start speaking Russian in 4 to 5 years, because if we don't catch up, we're going to be taken over by Russia. That's only possible. Donald Trump, of course, still working on Greenland. He would still like to see Greenland become part of the United States. I don't know what's going to happen there. I don't think Greenland voted unanimously that they did not want to become part of the United States. All 5 parts of their parliament said, nope, not going to happen. However, their prime minister did say that he will work with the United States as far as mining for elements, natural minerals, of course, and as far as our defense. But I know that Donald Trump really wants a piece of the land there in the Arctic Ocean. Just like on the other pole, we're fighting over in the South Pole for parts of Antarctica. We also need Greenland so that we can have a little stake in the North Pole in the Arctic Ocean. So we'll see how that plays out. Outside of that, that's about all I have for you guys today. And be sure to, again, go back and listen to some of the other topics we've talked about. If you like the show, share the show. Happy to have all of you guys here. Please stay warm today. It is brutally cold outside. If you see pets outside, please bring your pets in. I know if you're listening to the show, you probably already have your pets inside, but please keep an eye out for, I always say, if you see something, say something when it comes to terrorism or crime, but do the same thing for pets left outside in this crazy cold weather, because quite honestly, they just can't survive this. But I hope you guys do have a fantastic day. Elizabeth says, are you on Monday through Friday only? And what time do you begin? Hi, Elizabeth. Monday through Friday, except for some of you who don't know, I work in anti-piracy. And so therefore, there are mornings that I am not here, simply because some days I can have people fill in for me. Other days I cannot. Tomorrow I will not have a show because piracy. We've got a really big couple of days coming up, but I will be back on Thursday. I'll be here Friday. And the show starts at 7:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. And of course, you can rewatch the show at any time. It plays 24/7. You can check out the show on YouTube during the times that I'm not banned from YouTube. You can look on X, and I always tell people the best place to see the show is on X. Elon Musk supported us. The reason why Donald Trump won this election, outside of Trump, the man himself, is because Elon Musk put hundreds of millions of dollars into America PAC to get that early vote out. So go over to X, create an account. That's the best place to watch this show. Unless I'm having technical issues like today, I start at 7:30 a.m. But it's important. Share the show if you like the show. We've got to spread the truth faster than they spread the lies. And trust me, they're getting quicker every single day. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. I will look forward to talking to you all on Thursday, and I'll be giving some updates on social media as to when Colonel Joe Adams from the Washington Guard can join us. He is again planning a muster on Saturday where they're going to talk about terrorism and how do we defend ourselves from the terrorism that's coming in the year 2025. And already here. Have a good day, everybody. I will look forward to